The sound of ripping fabric echoed through Wellington Preparatory Academy's massive auditorium like a thunderclap. 800 students fell silent as Grace Mitchell stumbled forward, her modest black dress torn from shoulder to waist. Madison Pierce's perfectly manicured hand still clutched the fabric. Her coral pink lips curved in a cruel smile. "Oops." Madison's voice dripped with fake sweetness. "Guess Walmart doesn't make quality clothes. Maybe next time shop somewhere that matches a teacher's actual salary." Grace caught herself before falling, one hand instinctively moving to hold the torn fabric against her body. The stage lights felt like spotlights burning into her skin. Someone in the third row had their phone out, already recording. She could hear the whispers starting, rippling through the crowd like wildfire. Did Madison just... Oh my God, she actually did it. This is brutal, even for her. But Grace didn't cry. She didn't run. Instead, she straightened her spine with the kind of composure that made Madison's smirk falter for just a second, with deliberate calm. Grace removed her cardigan and tied it around her waist, covering the damage. The whispers grew louder. "Good morning, Wellington," Grace said into the microphone, her voice steady as granite. "I was going to talk about academic excellence today, but I think we need to discuss something more fundamental. Let me tell you about respect." Madison's face flushed red. This wasn't the reaction she'd orchestrated. Where were the tears, the humiliation? The new teacher was supposed to crumble, not stand there like she owned the stage. From her position at the side of the auditorium, Madison exchanged glances with her boyfriend Ethan Brooks. His broad shoulders shrugged, equally confused. Their whole crew, Sophia, Olivia, and the others shifted uncomfortably in their front row seats. "Respect," Grace continued, "isn't about the clothes you wear or the car you drive. It's about..." The auditorium doors burst open with such force they slammed against the walls. Principal Thompson rushed in, his usually composed face pale as parchment. His Italian leather shoes clicked rapidly against the polished floor as he practically ran toward the stage. In 20 years at Wellington, no one had ever seen Richard Thompson move faster than a dignified walk. "Miss Mitchell," he wheezed, slightly out of breath. "I need to speak with you. Immediately." Grace turned from the microphone, and that's when the students saw something that made them lean forward in their seats. Principal Thompson's hands were shaking. Actually shaking. The man who'd expelled senators' sons without blinking was trembling like a leaf. He whispered something in Grace's ear. The microphone caught fragments. "Just arrived. 3 cars. Didn't know. Should have told me." And Grace placed a calming hand on his shoulder and whispered back. Whatever she said made Thompson's eyes widen so far they looked ready to pop out of his skull. He grabbed the microphone like a drowning man reaching for a life preserver. "Students, please remain seated." Thompson's voice cracked on the last word. Madison smirked, thinking she'd really rattled the new teacher. Maybe Thompson was about to fire her on the spot for inappropriate dress. "We have an unexpected, a very important..." The main doors opened again. This time, they opened smoothly, held by 2 men in dark suits with earpieces. The kind of security Madison recognized from her father's business events. The expensive kind. 3 black Bentley SUVs were visible through the doorway. Engines still running. More security personnel flanked the entrance. And then, he walked in. Benjamin Harrison didn't just enter rooms, he commanded them. At 6'3", with silver hair and a presence that made Fortune 500 CEOs nervous. He moved through the auditorium like he owned it, which Madison realized with growing dread. He probably could. Every student at Wellington knew who Benjamin Harrison was. His face graced business magazines. His company, Harrison Technologies, had just hit a $1 trillion valuation. His educational foundation had paid for half the buildings on campus, including the Madison Pierce Athletic Center, named after her grandmother. The billionaire walked straight down the center aisle, his Armani suit worth more than most cars in the student parking lot. He didn't look left or right, didn't acknowledge the gasps and whispers. His steel-gray eyes were fixed on one person, Grace Mitchell. Madison's phone slipped from her suddenly numb fingers, clattering on the floor. No way. It wasn't possible. Benjamin Harrison climbed the stage steps and walked directly to Grace. Then, in front of 800 stunned students and faculty, he kissed her gently on the forehead. "Sorry I'm late for your first day, sweetheart," he said, his voice carrying easily through the silent auditorium. "Traffic from the airport was murder. Did I miss anything important?" Grace smiled, the first real smile anyone had seen from her. "Nothing I couldn't handle. Dad." The word hit the auditorium like a bomb. Dad. Madison felt the blood drain from her face as the truth crashed over her like a tidal wave. But before we continue with what happened next, if this story resonates with you, if you've ever faced bullying or witnessed someone standing up to it, please take a moment to like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories matter, and they help create a community where everyone feels heard. And if you'd like to support more stories that shed light on important issues like this, stories that might reach someone who really needs to hear them today, consider hitting the thanks button below this video. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps us create more content that makes a difference. Because sometimes, one story can change someone's entire perspective. Thank you for being here with us. Now, let's see what happened when Madison Pierce realized exactly who she'd been tormenting. Madison felt the blood drain from her face. Her designer handbag fell from nerveless fingers, spilling its contents across the floor. Ethan was frozen beside her, mouth hanging open. Sophia had stopped filming, her phone hanging limp in her hand. Grace Mitchell, the teacher they'd mocked for her 10-year-old Honda Civic, the woman they'd laughed at for her Walmart wardrobe, the nobody they'd decided to humiliate for fun. She was Grace Harrison, billionaire heiress, Fortune 500 royalty, the kind of old money that made Madison's new money family look like lottery winners. "The dress," someone whispered behind Madison. She ripped Harrison's daughter's dress on camera. Oh, God. Principal Thompson had found his voice, though it still shook. "Students, please welcome Mr. Benjamin Harrison, our largest donor and Miss Harrison's father." But Benjamin wasn't looking at the crowd. He was examining his daughter's hastily covered dress, his expression darkening like storm clouds. "Gracie, what happened to your dress?" "It's nothing," Grace said quietly. "Just a small accident." "Accident?" Benjamin's voice was flat. He turned to survey the student body. And Madison wished she could sink through the floor. His gaze stopped on the front row, where she sat with her crew, where her phone still recorded everything, where the evidence of what she'd done was preserved in perfect high definition. "Principal Thompson," Benjamin said, still staring at Madison, "I think we need to have a discussion about the culture at this school. But first," he pulled out his phone. "James, yes, we're here. Bring the files." Madison's mind raced. Files? What files? She tried to catch Ethan's eye, but he'd shifted away from her, already creating distance. Coward. The side door opened and a younger man entered, carrying a leather briefcase. He handed it to Grace, who accepted it with a nod. "Thank you, James." Grace turned back to the microphone. "Now, as I was saying about respect, I've spent 3 months at Wellington Prep. 3 very educational months." 3 months. Madison's stomach dropped. The new teacher had been here for 3 months, and she'd spent most of that time making her life miserable. Daily comments about her clothes, jokes about her car, that TikTok Sophia made about teacher or homeless. "I came here," Grace continued, "because my father and I heard concerning reports about bullying at Wellington. As someone who's passionate about education, I wanted to see for myself, to understand the culture here." She opened the briefcase. "So I applied under my mother's maiden name, drove my old college car, wore clothes from Target and Walmart. I wanted to see how this school treats people based on perceived social status." Papers rustled as she pulled out a folder. A thick folder. Madison Pierce. Grace read from the top sheet. 57 documented incidents of verbal harassment. 12 incidents of cyberbullying. 4 incidents of physical intimidation. And now, 1 count of assault. Assault. The word hung in the air like a noose. Madison found her voice. I didn't assault anyone. It was just what?" Grace's voice remained calm, professorial. "Just humiliating someone you thought was beneath you. Just destroying property. Just creating a hostile environment for someone trying to do their job. Madison's voice died. Her father was going to kill her. Actually kill her. The Yale scholarship. Her future. Everything was crumbling. "Ethan Brooks," Grace continued, pulling out another sheet. 43 incidents, including taking inappropriate photos of female teachers and sharing them in a group chat called Rate the Faculty. Ethan went white. "How did you?" Sophia Chen, 39 incidents. Olivia Martinez, 35. "Should I continue?" Grace looked up from the papers. "Or should we discuss the systematic harassment of scholarship students, the informal poor tax you've been collecting, the fake Instagram accounts you created to torment anyone who didn't meet your standards?" Principal Thompson swayed on his feet. This was worse than he'd imagined. The board would crucify him. "Dad," Grace said, turning to Benjamin, "would you like to share what else we discovered?" Benjamin's smile was sharp as a blade. "Certainly. You see, when my daughter told me about her plan, I did my own investigation. Financial records are fascinating things. For instance, did you know that Pierce Industries, Madison's family company, has $17 million in contracts with Harrison Technologies?" Madison heard a strangled sound. It might have been her. "Brooks Development, that would be Ethan's father, is currently bidding on a $40 million project with our Singapore division. Chen Logistics needs our shipping contracts to stay afloat. Martinez Holdings." He trailed off, shrugging. "Well, you get the picture." The auditorium was so quiet you could hear hearts breaking. "But I'm not a vindictive man," Benjamin continued. "I believe in consequences, not cruelty. So here's what's going to happen. Every student involved in harassing my daughter or any teacher or scholarship student has a choice. Option 1, immediate expulsion, which goes on your permanent record. Good luck explaining that to colleges." Muffled sobs came from somewhere in the crowd. "Option 2, you enter an intensive character rehabilitation program. 6 months, community service, counseling, and genuine work to undo the damage you've caused. You'll write personal apologies to everyone you've hurt. You'll attend workshops on empathy and social responsibility. And you'll be monitored to ensure real change." "That's blackmail," Madison burst out. I can't what?" Benjamin's voice went cold. "I can't protect my daughter. I can't demand consequences for assault. I can't use my resources to ensure this toxic culture ends." He stepped forward. Your family's lawyers are good. Madison, mine are better, much better. Grace raised a hand, and her father stepped back. She was in control now. Here's what you don't understand, Grace said, her voice carrying to every corner of the auditorium. This isn't about revenge. It's about change. Wellington Prep has become a breeding ground for cruelty disguised as tradition. Privilege confused with power. Wealth mistaken for worth. She pulled out her phone, not the latest iPhone the students expected, but a modest Android. Every incident I documented. I also recorded the pain it caused. Sarah Kim crying in the bathroom after you mocked her thrift store prom dress. David Anderson having panic attacks after your poor kid chants. Jennifer Walsh transferring schools because the harassment became unbearable. You recorded us, Sophia gasped. Without consent, public spaces, no expectation of privacy, and before you ask, yes, completely legal. My mother was a civil rights attorney. I know the law. Madison's parents chose that moment to arrive. She could see them through the glass doors, her mother in Chanel, her father in his custom suit. They'd gotten the call. Everyone's parents had. 30 seconds, Benjamin announced, checking his Patek Philippe. That's how long you have before this becomes a legal matter. Assault charges, lawsuits, criminal records. Or you can choose option 2 and maybe salvage your futures. I need to call my dad, Madison said, voice shaking. By all means, Grace gestured to the doors where parents were gathering. I'm sure Pierce Industries won't mind losing those contracts, though I hear your father just took out a substantial loan for expansion. Shame if he had to pay it back early. Madison's hand froze, reaching for her phone. Her father had been crowing about that expansion for months. It was supposed to secure their position in the industry. Without Harrison Technologies. Time's up, Benjamin announced. What's it going to be? The next sound was Madison Pierce, Queen Bee of Wellington Prep. Terror of scholarship students. Maker of viral cruelty dropping to her knees on the auditorium stage. Please, she whispered. Please, I'll do the program. I'll do whatever you want. Just, please, don't destroy my family. One by one, the others followed. Ethan, Sophia, Olivia. A dozen other students Grace hadn't even named yet. All on their knees, their carefully constructed worlds crashing down around them. Grace looked at them, really looked at them. Not with satisfaction or cruelty, but with something Madison couldn't identify. Something that looked almost like pity. Stand up, Grace said quietly. All of you, stand up. They did, confused. If you're serious about change, real change, not just avoiding consequences, then this program will help you. But understand something. This isn't punishment. It's an opportunity, a chance to become better people. The kind of people you always had the potential to be. Why? Madison asked, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. Why are you giving us a chance, after everything we did? Grace's expression softened, just slightly. Because someone gave me a chance once, when I was young and cruel and thought money made me matter. A teacher who saw past my behavior to the scared, insecure kid underneath. She saved my life. She paused. Maybe I can pay it forward. The auditorium doors opened again. Madison's parents rushed in, followed by dozens of other Wellington parents. The prosecutor who'd terrified Madison at family dinners looked terrified herself. Madison! Her mother's voice was shrill. Don't say anything. Don't sign anything. Mrs. Pierce. On Benjamin Harrison's voice cut through the chaos. How lovely to see you again. I believe we met at the charity gala last month, the one where you asked me to consider your husband's company for our new initiative. Madison watched her mother's face go through several expressions before settling on desperate politeness. Mr. Harrison, I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. He gestured to the stage. Your daughter assaulted mine on camera, in front of 800 witnesses. Would you like to see the footage? She didn't mean to tear my dress, Grace interjected, or to spend 3 months making my life miserable because she thought I was poor. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Madison saw her mother's shoulders slump in defeat. The program, her father said quickly. She'll do the program, whatever it takes. Grace nodded. Good. We start Monday. 5 a.m. sharp. Madison, you'll report to the Riverside Community Center. You'll be serving breakfast to the homeless. Ethan, you're assigned to the women's shelter maintenance and repairs. Sophia, the literacy program needs tutors for adults learning to read. 5 a.m., Olivia whispered. But that's all. Early, yes. The people you'll be helping have been up since 4, trying to get a bed for the next night. Or did you think homelessness ran on your schedule? Benjamin pulled out a tablet. Each of you will receive a detailed schedule. Community service 20 hours a week. Mandatory counseling sessions. Weekly progress reports. And a personal project. You'll each mentor a scholarship student for the remainder of the year. For 6 months. Ethan's father had arrived, looking furious. This is ridiculous. They're children. They're 18, Grace corrected. Legal adults. Old enough to vote, drive, and be held accountable for assault. Would you prefer we handle this through the courts? The implied threat silenced him. Furthermore, Benjamin added, each participant will write a 10,000-word essay on privilege, responsibility, and the impact of their actions, due in 3 months. I'll be reading them personally. 10,000 words, Madison gasped. Consider it practice for college applications, Grace said dryly, though I suppose you've never had to worry about those essays. Money tends to smooth that process, doesn't it? The shame burned hotter than any anger Madison had ever felt. Principal Thompson finally found his voice again. The school will cooperate fully with this program. In fact, we'll be implementing new anti-bullying measures immediately. You'll be implementing more than that, Benjamin said coldly. A full review of admissions practices, financial transparency, and a new scholarship program funded by families whose children participate in bullying. Funded by, you mean we have to pay? Mrs. Brooks looked horrified. Consider it an investment in your children's character, Grace suggested. Unless you'd prefer to explain to Yale why your son has assault charges on his record. Madison watched her perfect world crumble in real time. Her social media followers would abandon her. Her carefully curated image was destroyed. Everything she'd built on cruelty and exclusion was gone. But something else was happening, too. As she looked at Grace Harrison, brilliant, accomplished, choosing to teach when she could have done anything, Madison felt something she'd never experienced before. Respect. Real respect. Not the fear she'd mistaken for it, but genuine admiration for someone who'd played a longer game than she could have imagined. I'll do it, Madison said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. All of it. The community service, the counseling, the essay. Everything. Grace studied her for a long moment. Why? Because... Madison struggled for words. Because you're right. I've been horrible. I've hurt people for fun. I thought being rich made me better than everyone. She swallowed hard. I want to be better. I need to be better. Pretty words, Grace said. Let's see if your actions match them. She turned to address the wider crowd. For everyone else, the silent bystanders, the ones who watched and did nothing, you have homework too. A 5-page essay on the cost of silence, why witnessing bullying without acting makes you complicit. Due Monday. Groans echoed through the auditorium. And finally, Benjamin announced, I'll be establishing a new position at Wellington, Director of Student Welfare and Culture. Someone to ensure this never happens again. Someone with experience in both education and character development. He smiled at his daughter. I believe you know the perfect candidate. Grace smiled back. I might have someone in mind. Madison realized with a jolt that Grace wasn't leaving. She'd be here, every day, watching, ensuring they followed through. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like hope. One more thing, Grace said, pulling out a final paper from her briefcase. This is a contract. By participating in the program, you agree to full transparency. Your progress or lack thereof will be documented. Your transformation or failure will be public. No hiding behind PR firms or family lawyers. Public. Madison's mother stepped forward. Absolutely not. We have a reputation. A reputation built on what? Grace asked coolly. Money status or actual character, because from where I'm standing, only one of those matters. She handed the contract to Madison. First signature. Your choice. Madison looked at the paper, at her parents, at her friends, former friends waiting to see what she'd do, at Grace Harrison, who'd seen her at her absolute worst and still offered a chance at redemption. She signed. The pen felt heavier than any designer handbag she'd ever carried. But as she handed it back, something in Grace's expression shifted. A tiny nod. A moment of approval. Welcome to the first day of your actual education, Grace said. Class starts Monday. Don't be late. As chaos erupted in the auditorium, parents arguing, students crying, reporters who'd somehow already arrived shouting questions, Madison stood frozen on stage. Everything she'd known was ending. But maybe, just maybe, something better was beginning. The last thing she saw before her mother dragged her away was Grace Harrison, standing calm in the storm she'd created, her father's protective hand on her shoulder. The teacher they'd tried to break had broken them instead. And Madison realized with crystal clarity she'd never understood power at all. Until now. Monday, 5 a.m. The Riverside Community Center looked different in the pre-dawn darkness. Madison Pierce sat in her Range Rover, designer coffee growing cold in her hands, watching homeless individuals line up outside. 3 months ago, she would have driven past without a second glance. Now, she was about to serve them breakfast. You can do this, she whispered to her reflection. The girl staring back looked nothing like the queen bee of Wellington Prep. No makeup, hair in a simple ponytail, wearing the required volunteer t-shirt and jeans. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father, remember what's at stake. As if she could forget. The contracts, the reputation, the future, suppose. Everything balanced on proving she could change. Madison stepped out of her car and immediately shivered. Not from cold, but from the realization that some people face this temperature without a $70,000 vehicle to retreat to. You're late. Grace Harrison stood by the entrance, clipboard in hand. She wore the same volunteer shirt, but somehow made it look professional. It's 4:58, Madison protested. Inside. You need to be ready to serve by 5. That means arriving at 4:45 to prep. Grace made a note on her clipboard. First lesson, respect for others' time. These people have limited windows to get food before job searches or shelter checkouts. Every minute you're late is a meal someone misses. Madison felt the familiar surge of indignation, then forced it down. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. Prove it. Inside, the industrial kitchen was already bustling. Other volunteers, real ones, not court-ordered rich kids, prepared enormous pots of oatmeal, scrambled eggs, and coffee. Madison recognized none of them from her social circle. Madison, "You're on serving line," Grace instructed. "Smile, make eye contact, ask how they're doing, treat every person with dignity." The first man in line looked about her father's age, but worn down by life. His clothes were clean but threadbare. When Madison handed him a plate, her hands shook slightly. "Thank you, miss," he said politely. "Bless you." "You're welcome," Madison managed. Then, remembering Grace's instructions, "How are you this morning?" His weathered face cracked into surprise. "Better now. Thanks for asking. You're new here." First day. "Well, welcome to the breakfast club. I'm Robert." By the time the morning rush ended, Madison had served over 200 people. Her feet hurt, her back ached, and she'd heard more thank yous than in her entire privileged life. Each person had a name, a story. Robert was a veteran. Sarah had 3 kids in the family shelter. Marcus was studying for his GED between shifts at 2 jobs. "How do you feel?" Grace asked as they cleaned up. Madison considered lying, then decided against it. "Ashamed." "Why?" "Because I've spent more on a single purse than some of these families see in a month. Because I've thrown away food that could have fed someone. Because I've been so blind." Grace nodded. "That's a start. Same time Wednesday." As Madison drove home, she passed Ethan's Lamborghini heading to his assignment. Through the window, she glimpsed his face pale, scared, probably hungover. They hadn't spoken since Friday. His "every man for himself" response had shown his true character. Her phone lit up with notifications. The Wellington gossip machine was in overdrive. Someone had leaked photos of Madison in her volunteer shirt. The caption read, "How the mighty have fallen." Good, she thought. Let them see. That afternoon was her first counseling session. Dr. Patricia Reeves didn't look like the therapists in movies. No couch, no notebook, just 2 chairs and brutal honesty. "Why do you bully people?" "Madison, I don't—" Madison caught herself. "I didn't think of it as bullying. It was just what we did." "What you did? Take ownership." "What I did." The words tasted bitter. "I guess it made me feel powerful, important." "Because you didn't feel those things already." Madison shifted uncomfortably. "My older sister graduated summa cum laude from Harvard. My younger brother is a chess prodigy. I'm just pretty and rich. That's all I had." "So you weaponized it?" "Yes." For an hour, Dr. Reeves dissected Madison's psyche with surgical precision. By the end, Madison felt raw, exposed, but also, strangely, lighter. Week 2 brought a new challenge. Grace had assigned her to tutor adults in the literacy program. Madison's student was Rosa, a 45-year-old woman who'd never learned to read. "I'm embarrassed," Rosa admitted. "My children read better than me." Madison thought of all the times she'd mocked people's grammar on social media. "There's nothing to be embarrassed about. You're here now. That's brave." Teaching Rosa was harder than any AP class. It required patience Madison didn't know she possessed. But when Rosa successfully read her first complete sentence, the cat sat on the mat and burst into tears of joy. Madison cried too. "I can read to my grandbabies now," Rosa whispered. That night, Madison started her essay. The words came slowly at first, then in a torrent. "I used to think power meant making others feel small. Real power is helping someone believe they can be more than they imagined." Week 3 introduced another test. Grace required each participant to attend a restorative justice circle with their victims. Madison faced a room of scholarship students she'd tormented. Sarah Kim sat directly across from her, the girl Madison had mocked for her thrift store prom dress, who'd cried in the bathroom, who'd almost dropped out. "I hated you," Sarah said quietly, "not just for what you did, but for making me hate myself. I started believing I really was worthless." Madison couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face as student after student shared their pain. David Anderson described panic attacks. Jennifer Walsh, participating via video, explained how the harassment had triggered an eating disorder. "I'm sorry" felt pathetically inadequate, but Madison said it anyway, to each person, looking them in the eye. "Sorry doesn't erase anything," Jennifer said through the screen. "But maybe it's a beginning." After the circle, Madison found Grace in the hallway. "I didn't realize. I knew I was mean, but I didn't understand the damage. Real damage." "Most bullies don't," Grace replied. "They see tears and think weak instead of human, pain as victory instead of tragedy. How do I fix this? You don't. You can't undo trauma, but you can commit to never causing it again. And maybe, if you're sincere, you can help heal some wounds." Madison's transformation didn't go unnoticed at Wellington. Her former friends treated her like a traitor. Sophia created a new group chat, Madison's Pity Party, mocking her volunteer work. Olivia accidentally spilled coffee on Madison's essay draft. "This is just an act." Ethan confronted her after school, playing Grace's game until the heat dies down. Madison looked at her ex-boyfriend, really looked at him. The cruel smirk she'd once found attractive now seemed pathetic. "No, Ethan, this is who I'm choosing to be. The act was everything before. You're destroying our reputation. I'm trying to build a real one." He stormed off, but Madison noticed several students nodding approvingly. Change was rippling outward. Week 6 brought unexpected news. Grace called her into the new office director of student welfare and culture. "Your essay," Grace said, holding the draft. "It's good, really good. Have you considered education as a career?" Madison laughed nervously. "Me, a teacher after everything." Sometimes the best teachers are those who understand failure, who faced their worst selves and chosen better. Grace leaned forward. "Yale accepted your application for their education program. Full scholarship from the Harrison Foundation if you're interested." "But why would you help me after everything I did?" Grace smiled, the first real smile Madison had seen from her. "Remember I told you about the teacher who saved me? I was worse than you." "Madison, I was cruel with calculation, not just carelessness. I destroyed a girl's full scholarship out of petty jealousy. She attempted suicide." Madison gasped. "I was 14, rich, untouchable, until Mrs. Chen, yes, Sophia's aunt, ironically saw through my behavior to the frightened, insecure child underneath. She could have had me expelled. Instead, she mentored me, taught me empathy, helped me understand that privilege meant responsibility, not entitlement." "Is that why you came to Wellington, because of Sophia?" "Partly. I knew she was following her cousin's path, but also because I believe in redemption, in the power of education to transform not just minds but hearts." Madison felt tears threatening again. These days, she cried often, not the manipulative tears of her past, but genuine emotion. "I don't deserve this chance." "No," Grace agreed. "You don't. Neither did I. That's what makes it Grace undeserved favor. The question is, what will you do with it?" The community service hours flew by. Madison found herself arriving early, staying late. Rosa progressed to children's books. Robert got a job interview and asked Madison to help him practice. The Breakfast Club became less obligation and more purpose. Her essay evolved too. 10,000 words became 15,000. Then 20. She couldn't stop writing about privilege, responsibility, transformation, about the lies wealth whispered and the truths poverty screamed. 3 months in, the mid-program evaluation arrived. Madison sat before a panel including Grace, Dr. Reeves, Principal Thompson, and Benjamin Harrison himself. "Your progress has been remarkable," Benjamin said, reviewing her file. "Volunteer coordinators praise your dedication. Your tutoring student has advanced 2 grade levels. Disciplinary incidents at Wellington have dropped 40% since you began intervening in bullying situations." "It's not enough," Madison said. "I hurt people for years. 3 months of good doesn't balance that." "No," Benjamin agreed. "It doesn't, which is why Phase 2 begins now." Madison blinked. "Phase 2, Grace slid a folder across the table. "You'll be establishing an anti-bullying program at Wellington. Student-led, administration-supported, mandatory workshops for all students, peer counseling, restorative justice circles. You'll lead it." "Me, but everyone hates me." "Everyone hates who you were," Dr. Reeves corrected. "Who you're becoming, that remains to be seen." The program launch was terrifying. Madison stood before the same auditorium where her world had shattered, facing 800 skeptical students. "I know what you're thinking," she began. "Madison Pierce, teaching about kindness. The irony isn't lost on me. 3 months ago, I stood on this stage as everything I'd built on cruelty collapsed. Today, I stand here rebuilt on something better." She talked about power and privilege, about the lies she'd believed and the truths she'd learned, about Rosa reading to her grandchildren and Robert getting his job, about Sarah Kim, who'd agreed to co-lead the program with her. "Bullying isn't about strength," Madison said. "It's about fear. Fear that without making others small, we'll be revealed as small ourselves. But here's what I learned. We're all small. We're all scared. We're all just trying to matter. The difference is how we choose to matter." The speech went viral, not mockingly, but genuinely. Madison Redemption trended. Messages poured in from students nationwide sharing their own stories of transformation. Ethan and his crew tried to sabotage the program, spreading rumors that Madison was only acting reformed for college applications. But when Sarah Kim stood up in the cafeteria and declared, "Madison Pierce saved my life by learning to value it," the opposition crumbled. Even Sophia eventually joined, breaking down in a counseling session about her own insecurities, her need to belong, her fear of losing status. "I followed Madison because I was scared to be her target," Sophia admitted. "I became a bully to avoid being bullied." 6 months passed in a blur of growth. Setbacks, breakthroughs, and small victories. Madison's final evaluation was scheduled for the same day as Wellington's graduation. "You've completed all requirements," Grace announced. Community service hours exceeded by 300%. Essay submitted and praised by the review board. Anti-bullying program showing measurable success. The question is, what happens now? Madison had prepared for this moment. "I want to continue. Not because I have to, but because I choose to." The Breakfast Club needs volunteers. Rosa wants to start a book club. The anti-bullying program has requests from other schools. This isn't an ending, it's a beginning. Benjamin Harrison smiled. Then, I have a proposition. The Harrison Foundation is launching a national initiative, Privilege to Purpose. We need youth ambassadors, leaders who understand both sides, who can speak to the Madisons and the Sarahs of the world. Interested? Yes. No hesitation. Absolutely yes. Graduation day dawned bright and clear. Madison wore her cap and gown with a humility she'd never felt before. As valedictorian, her grades had soared. Once she'd stopped focusing on social warfare, she had the honor of speaking. 6 months ago, a teacher's dress ripped on this stage. She began. That tear revealed more than fabric. It exposed a culture of cruelty we'd normalized. It showed us who we really were beneath designer clothes and family names. She found Grace in the audience, sitting with her father, watching with pride. That teacher gave us something invaluable, a mirror. Not the filtered, edited versions we post online, but true reflection. Some of us didn't like what we saw, but she also gave us something else, the chance to change what that mirror showed. Madison's voice grew stronger. Today, we graduate not just from high school, but from old versions of ourselves. We leave behind the lie that worth comes from wealth, that power means dominance, that success requires someone else's failure. She looked at Sarah Kim, at Rosa in the audience, at all the lives touched and transformed. We enter the world knowing that real power lifts others up. Real success creates opportunities for everyone. Real worth comes from service, not status. Jean and the standing ovation lasted 5 minutes, but the moment that mattered most came after. When a freshman approached Madison, "Some kids are bullying my friend," the girl said quietly. "Will you help?" "Always," Madison promised, and meant it. 5 years later, Madison Pierce stood before another auditorium, this time at Yale's Graduate School of Education. Her thesis, From Perpetrator to Protector, Transforming Bullying Culture Through Restorative Justice, had won national recognition. Grace Harrison sat in the front row, now provost of Wellington Prep, which had become a model for anti-bullying initiatives nationwide. Sarah Kim was there too, having just finished law school, focusing on education law and student rights. As Madison looked around the room at lives changed, connections forged, purposes found, she understood something fundamental. The dress that ripped on that stage hadn't just exposed thread and fabric. It had exposed the possibility of transformation. She'd walked into Wellington Prep as Madison Pierce. Bully and mean girl. She was leaving as Ms. Pierce, educator and advocate. The teacher's secret wasn't Grace's hidden identity or wealth. It was simpler and more profound, the belief that anyone could change, given the chance and the choice. Madison had been given both. Now it was her turn to pass them on. The girl who'd torn a dress to wound had learned to mend lives instead. And that, she realized, was the most powerful lesson of all.